This is Consumer Friend.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Consumer Friend podcast. We have a passion for breaking down the complex language around consumer rights so that we can all understand it and get a better deal. We also do this in the world of retrofit. What is retrofit, I hear you ask? Well, it's simply the process of making your home more energy efficient, from resealing your windows to getting solar panels on your roof. As ever, Louise is with me. Hello Louise, how are you?
I'm good, Adam. And my solar panels, obviously, because we always talk about my solar panels, are working really efficiently. I think I've saved over 50 trees now. This is the bit that I'm mainly interested in, how many trees I save.
That's amazing. I listened back in preparation for this podcast. I listened back to our first podcast around retrofitting, which was back in August last year. And you were speaking about how you were looking into getting solar panels on your roof. And you finally did it. When did you get them done?
They were commissioned, so they started working in January. I obviously did it so that I was able to talk about the full customer journey from a personalised experience. So I obviously invested in this because that's how invested I am in Consumer Friend, Adam. I totally took one for the team.
And you're now saving money.
50 trees.
And you're saving money on your energy bills, and the planet.
I am saving money on my energy bills. Yes, I am. Even though it's winter, because I did also invest in a battery as well. And I showed you the fancy schmancy grid thing that they send you, which is like an app where you can see how much power your battery's got and how much is going back to the grid. And yes, I am saving energy and saving money. So it's worth doing.
Well done. So we had two podcasts in series one. We did the first one on energy performance certificates and Fabric First, basically measuring the current performance of your house and the simple things that you can do to kind of plug those energy leakages. The second one was about the whole house approach, talking about the technology you can use to improve the performance of your house and reducing your bills and making your home a cozier place to live. In terms of some statistics.
Oh, here we go. Adam and his stats. Do you know what, Ads? I've got stats today. I might outstat your stats.
I've tried to calm mine down. UK must reduce its CO2 emissions by 80% by 2050. That's according to the 1990 baseline.
What does that mean?
So we've got to reduce our CO2 emissions by 80%. Is that
CO2 emission?
Carbon dioxide emissions, the harmful gases that are ruining our planets.
Thank you. Plain English, Adam. Always.
Over a quarter of current emissions are attributed to the 26 million homes in the UK. So our stat from the first podcast was 26 million homes in the UK. Only 500,000 of them at the moment are up to the standard to hit the 2050 targets. And approximately 80% of the homes we live in today will still be used in 2050. So we have a net zero target to get to by 2050. And we need to therefore retrofit or improve the efficiencies of our current stock.
Adam, wait a minute, you haven't paused for my stat. I think my stats are better than your stats today. 6 out of 10 renters, people living in rental accommodation, are living in energy inefficient homes.
Yeah, I can believe that.
According to the BBC, who did investigation on it for 1.9 million homes, and 1 million fell below a grade C on their energy performance certificate rating.
Energy performance certificate goes from A to G, A being the best, G being terrible. Yeah?
I was trying to think of a word for terrible that began with a G, but I didn't come up with one. But landlords don't really know what to do because there's no clear government policy on it at the minute. They're still waiting for the government to sort of point and press and put them in the right direction. So it seems a little bit ambitious for us to hit this target by 2050, but that's just my opinion.
Well,
my limited solar-based opinion.
So we have got a real-life retrofit expert with us today. Russell Smith is from Parity Projects and has also created Retrofit Works, but I will not talk about it because I will do it an injustice. Hello, Russell. How are you?
Hi. Yeah, very well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, well, good. Thank you. So, in the words of Cilla Black, tell us who you are and where you're from.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, Russell Smith from Parity Projects. I've been going at this particular subject of domestic retrofit for, 20 years now. And it started when I did my own home up. So I was a consumer and I was naffed off with the very terrible advice I was getting. I went to builders, architects, and they all really didn't know what I was talking about. And all I really wanted to do was have very low energy bills and low carbon emissions and try and save the planet. Now, luckily, I had a modicum of understanding of how to do stuff because I'm a civil engineer. And I put a plan together. And I took my time, worked out all the best things to do, and I rolled my sleeves up and I got on with it. And I found that really there wasn't anybody out there could help me put this little jigsaw together and get the work done. Even people working in local authority, they were inquisitive, but certainly weren't experts. So I ended up a bit depressing, but I was an expert by the time I'd got this job started, and I ended up having 3,000 people over the course of 3 years want to come and have a look at what I was doing.
Oh, wow.
And they came from all over the country. And it started off with me sort of giving out a few leaflets at the local station to see, if they wanted to just come out and have a look. And I would spend the weekend walking, doing laps of my own house as people kept coming and going and just showing them what I was doing. And it was just a house that had been pulled apart with bits of insulation and to most people, newfangled new kit in the house, showing them what it was all about. So luckily I wrote down everybody's name and address. So there were people that I contacted to see if they wanted to do it to their house, and they did, and the business was born. So that's where it all started for me. That was in Sutton in South London, and I started the business there in my bedroom, and it's now grown, and we're going strong ever since. So
you've been doing that for 20 years?
Yeah, 20 years. And you mentioned Retrofit Works in the intro.
Yes.
So Parity it's a software-led consultancy now. So we provide tools to other people that want to give advice and councils that want to put strategies together. But Retrofit Works was something that was, again, born out of frustration, really. I was project managing people's renovations as well. So I was giving them a design and a plan and managing contractors to get the work done. And if you want to get this done at scale, as you mentioned, there's a large number of houses that need to be tackled by a deadline that won't move because, frankly, the planet would be dead if we don't hit that deadline. Yeah. I basically went out and wrote to a whole bunch of trade associations and professional institutions and said, we need something because at the moment the government's going to come up with a Green Deal, so this is 10 years ago. It's going to be awful unless we do something about it. And after a series of workshops, the first of which we had 70 companies from all of the UK came and sat in Westminster Central Hall that I hired, and we came up with a plan, and that was Retrofit Works, which is a co-op. It's owned by small companies and charities and local organisations that want to make this happen. And it does two things. One is it goes out there and wins contracts on behalf of these small companies. So it's not all about main contractors bidding for work and then subcontracting. They're in charge. And it's about community groups saying, well, we know what we need in our area. Just give us a supply chain. So they own the supply chain basically by being a member of the co-op. And it's now going to turn over about £25 million. Wow. Because it goes out there and wins contracts. The biggest one at the moment is the Mayor of London. We're delivering their Warm Homes programme. We're delivering East Sussex County Council's Warm Home Check service. And we've now got Able to Pay. I call them Able to Pay because there are people that want to get this stuff done and they've got nowhere to go. So Retrofit Works works in partnership with a bunch of community groups all around the country, delivering Able to Pay retrofit programmes, such as Cosy Homes Oxfordshire, such as the Your Home Better programme in Greater Manchester, in partnership with Greater Manchester Combined Authority. So it's ground up. I think that's the best way to describe it. Yeah. Retrofit Works is about trying to get everyone together to sort this problem, rather than waiting for somebody with broad shoulders to spend a lot of money and say, here's a solution which isn't actually quite right because nobody's been involved in help design it. So communities designing their own way forward is very powerful, and we're finding it's actually a route to success.
That's amazing. That is amazing. If I, as a lone individual homeowner, if I wanted to start doing some work on my home to try and make it more energy efficient, how would I go about doing that with either Parity or with Retrofit Works?
Well, you'd talk to me about my solars first.
I would completely ignore Louise and everything that she says.
Adam!
It's a good place to start. I mean, there's no harm in going straight for a solar panel with a local solar firm, right? Because it's a no-brainer. It can be installed on your roof, accessed from the outside. It doesn't impact other things. But one thing we'll probably come back to at other points in this podcast is that most other things you do in a retrofit are interweaved in some way or another with everything else. So you need a plan. You really need to, for everybody. So Adam, if you came to me and said, what do? I'd say, well, we need to look at your house and look at everything you need to do by 2050. Assume it's all installed in 2050, then work back to where you are now and look at the logical order of doing that work so that you're spending the least amount of money over that period, assuming you live there forever. And if you've got a plan like that, and even if you sell your house in 5 years' time, you can give that plan to the next owner and say, well, I've done these first 3 things on the list. Here's the rest. By the way, if you're going to get a mortgage for this, why don't you include a bit more in your mortgage to do these other few things that need to happen? Because you know what it's like. You give somebody a plan and they're locked into a mortgage for 10 years and they say, well, I haven't got any money.
Yeah.
Well, I did mine like that. I did mine because I did my roof insulation first.
Yeah.
Because I looked at my EPC, I went through the .gov stuff, which is not that easy to understand, but I went through that. I did my roof insulation. Then I did my single glazed windows and double glazed those. Then I did my cavity wall.
Okay.
Then I did my solars.
Great. Brilliant.
So went through that. I don't think there's anything else I've got to do yet. I hope not.
Oh, there'd be plenty.
There will
This is
be
exciting.
plenty.
I need to learn about this because then I can talk to Adam about it all the time, not just on podcasts.
There's a few tools that we provided. I mean, one of the things you probably want to talk about really is how do I start in all this without spending a shed load of money? You want to because one of the big problems we've got is that most householders have literally no idea that there is a lot to do in their home to hit these national targets. There's never been a national campaign that gets everybody to understand this stuff. And it's not just consumers here, right? By the way, a little tangent, I hate the phrase consumer because it's that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Nominative determinism. Yeah, you're telling people they need to consume by calling them a consumer when sustainability needs them to not consume. Anyway, that's another podcast altogether, right?
We'll invite you back on season 3. We've changed our name.
Thought I'd get it in there.
It's a non-consumer friend.
Whatever, customer. Anyway, so the issue really is that people don't know enough about this. So therefore, if somebody suggests them, and it applies equally to the contracting industry. So most people say, I've got a leak in my roof, I need a new boiler, or I want a new kitchen, and they go to people that do that specialism. They don't know what this is. Yet that is the bulk of our industry. 80% of the turnover of the construction industry is small conversations between people wanting bits of work done, people that aren't even necessarily licensed. You don't need a license to be a builder in the UK, right? I'm sure as trading standards professionals, you've probably come across this a lot. Anybody can stick a mobile number on their fan and say, I'm a builder. And they don't have to have had any training. They don't need a license to operate, nothing. And we've got no way of getting the knowledge that we're all going to talk about in this podcast into people's brains so they're giving the right advice at the moment when they're most receptive, i.e., there's a leak, there's a boiler being moved, a kitchen going in. Think of all the insulation that's being blocked by a new kitchen going in and it not being installed before the kitchen goes in, right? That is a building that's locked down for the next 15 to 20 years of high carbon and high bills because nobody's going to take their kitchen out to put insulation in, are they?
Yeah.
So it's getting this education in people's brains at the right moment, at the right time, to make sure we're all taking really good decisions, incorporating things at the least cost moment to get it done. Because imagine, you mentioned the private rented sector. Let's say the government came up with a new regulation that landlords must get to an EPC of B by 2030. At the moment, it's a C. Let's say they impose that because we need to move much more quickly. And the landlords are looking and say, well, I need to take a lot of stuff out to do all the things that all these measures need to be installed. These are additional costs that are completely unnecessary because they didn't have a plan. That plan that I told you about right at the start of all this, if they had that plan, they knew it would be necessary. And as the tenant moves out, they've got 2 weeks maybe to turn the house around rather than just painting. Let's get a few things in there now. I'll do the next one when the next time a tenant moves out. And they've got a plan. There's no kickback, less of a kickback, because these things can be planned and incorporated into a long-term asset management plan. And at the moment, it's just there's nothing because nobody knows it's needed, no plans.
Yeah. It's also it's one of the other things that we talk about quite a lot on the podcast, and we train businesses on it is around consumer vulnerability and understanding your customer base. Because actually, when you are looking at this retrofit stuff, so I did put a bit of a plan together and then got my boiler changed, but more because my boiler broke, not because I wasn't going to do it at that particular time. But and every time I say cost of living crisis, Adam finds me. But with the cost of living crisis, with a lack of knowledge, so marketplace vulnerability, as a consumer or customer trying to get into this space to say I want to do this to my house, there's not a lot of clear information, which means that you are vulnerable because it's something you're going to do once as well, because it's not it's not like buying bread from the shop, which you do regularly, so you're not vulnerable when you're buying bread, I hope. There is that marketplace vulnerability, so consumers can be scammed, like you've just talked about in relation to builders not having to be registered. There is a spike in scams in relation to green energy because people don't understand it, so they believe what they're told.
And there's a lot of people moving into selling solar panels right now because it's an easy switch from selling windows to or whatever. Don't want to disparage the window industry there, but it's a thing that's standalone. If you're the home improvement sector in inverted commas, it's basically sticking things into buildings with little complication. Renovation is completely different. You have to make the many more things interact. It's complex. So having that plan up front is really, really important. And your point, Louise, about vulnerability, you're the first person other than myself I've ever heard say that. I've been saying for years that even you might be somebody that's pretty wealthy and you've got no health issues, you've got no mental health issues, but you've never done it before. Mm-hmm. You are vulnerable.
Yep. So we talk about vulnerability as situational, so what's going on around you,
absolutely,
health, your personal circumstances, or marketplace. So, for example, retrofitting your house, buying a funeral plan, buying an electric car, switching your gas or electricity provision, all of those things. And if we're trying to make decisions based on imperfect information, that automatically makes us marketplace vulnerable in that situation. Fortunately for me, when I did my solars, I didn't actually understand the information, but I had people that I trusted that I could ask.
Yes.
Because I had that network. And not everybody has that, which is why on the website we try and provide information that's easy to read and easy for people to understand, so that it doesn't feel quite so overwhelming. And pressure as well. The additional pressure, we've got to save the planet, may make you not make the best decisions for yourself at that time, because it does feel like quite a lot of pressure. 2050 is not a long way away.
No, not at all. And in fact, my view is we need to get it done by 2040. Because the International Panel on Climate Change have stated that if we lag much beyond that, we aren't going to save anything. If indeed we're in a position where we can save anything now, that's a different debate. Again, another podcast. But we're in a position now where people need to make really quite important changes and need to make it quickly. And that's one of the reasons why Parity and Retrofit Works together have been working on these programs for local areas such as Cosy Homes Oxfordshire, such as Your Home Better. EcoFurb covers London. We did have a Warmer Sussex program as well, which covered East and West Sussex. That didn't work. We can go into, if we've got time, I can go into why that didn't work. But the bottom line is, these are services that help people understand their home and move them gradually through a process with a hand around their shoulders, saying, "Right, these are things you need to do next. Here's why. We'll help you do it. We've already vetted a whole bunch of designers, consultants, surveyors, contractors to help you get to this done, and we'll make sure they do a good job." The problem is that costs money. You can't offer that service for free. The Oxfordshire programme actually is the first one ever in the UK to stand on its own 2 feet without any external funding, because people were prepared to pay for that extra assurance. And certainly, local authorities can't pay for that. They're really up against it funding-wise. Yeah. And this particular government isn't minded to pay for anything like that for anybody right now at all. But the market is saying to us they want to buy it, which is great. So you offer them that, but there's going to be a whole load of people that will not want to buy that level of service. They will much prefer to go to a contractor and get a deal, and happy to pay, cut out the VAT so they get a really good deal, right? That's the way some of this market operates. And if that's an unregulated market, God knows what they're buying. It certainly isn't moving them towards a least cost route to getting a net zero home energy performance by 2040 or 50. You're building in the scammers. You're opening the door to poor quality. And as soon as you install poor quality measures within a home, whether it's a heat pump, whether it's insulation, you're building in long-term problems for that building, especially insulation. We've seen spray foam going into people's lofts and things like that, and then them having to have it all taken out again. Oh my God! Yeah.
And they're targeting consumers that are vulnerable because of their situations again in this space. And then what they're doing is they are it's invalidating people's mortgages.
Yep.
It's causing untold amounts of issues for people.
Yep. So the simple thing for me, and it wouldn't even be that expensive, if we gave every home one of those plans, we paid for it. It's an unbiased, impartial person coming to do a survey of their property, telling everybody, these are all the things you need to do to get to 2050. It goes with the house. You're buying the property, you want to see that plan. oh, I know what to include in my mortgage. I know I can get some quotes before I buy. I can, and maybe even the banks, and they are alive to this, by the way. I have regular conversations with mortgage providers, being live to the fact that it should be part of the process. That if somebody got access to this level of information, no, well, we can provide that. Customer might have to pay for it as part of the mortgage process, or but it's great information. Then it really insulates people from the vulnerability issue because they've got more information.
How does it differ from an EPC, an energy performance certificate?
Massively. So an EPC is very useful for that particular moment in time. It gives you an indication of the likely cost of running that house. Underlying that EPC will be data that's been collected, that's crunched by the maths that gives you an EPC, but it also gives you plenty of other things you might not even see in the certificate. It will give you the amount of carbon dioxide that's going to be emitted by that house. There are some automated outputs that are included with an EPC, so there's an automated list of things that you could do with your house. It's far too broad brush. It's very, very basic. When we crunch that data, we're using our tools. We actually bring in other data as well. So we've got roof orientation. We've got floor areas from other data sets as well. So we can check that the surveyor's information has been collected correctly, because there is an issue there with varying surveyor quality. But really what you want to be able to do is have a trained person that can drive a tool that can say, okay, we've analysed your home against maybe 1,000 things that could happen to that property. And we do, by the way. And these are all the things you need to do to get to net zero, least cost. And you've only got a budget to do the ones at the top of that list. That's fine. But you've got visibility of the whole lot. Then you're an educated customer, right? You might then say to me, but there's all these new cool technologies coming down the road that might change that plan. Well, if that plan exists in space or in the internet somewhere and you own that, you can just modify it. And as costs change, my God, have they changed over the last 2 years, right? So prices going up, not just that, but energy prices gone up, which actually makes your plan more attractive. But the EPC doesn't account for current energy prices, unfortunately. So you won't see the benefit of doing this in the way that the market would do. Our tools enable that to happen. We've actually very shortly going to be launching a national model, so anybody could log on to their own home for free and have a play with the things that they could do with their own property. So we're really excited about that. We've already got an energy model for every address in England and Wales. We're just building up this capability so people could log on in the future.
I'm watching Adam's face, Russell. This is so up Adam's street. He loves all this stuff, like all the technology stuff. I'm watching his face. He's like in awe. It's like really intently. And I work with Adam in the day job as well. And I know when he's not listening, which sometimes I don't always listen either. But you're so intently listening. It's weird. I'm
trying to take it all in.
I know.
Thanks, Russell. That sounds amazing. It's so good that we know that there are experts out there that are able to provide homeowners with this information. I've got a few questions that I kind of want to ask you.
Sure.
How do you balance the need for energy efficiency with the need to kind of maintain or improve indoor air quality, thermal comfort, or other building performance factors?
What the hell does thermal comfort mean?
I could give you a very simple definition of thermal comfort.
That would be great.
Okay, so thermal comfort, it could get very scientific, but basically, is your body able to cope with its surroundings? And that's not necessarily just about thermal. It could be about air quality as well. So for instance, if your head is hot and your body is cold, you're going to be uncomfortable. You might not be able to explain it. It might just be slightly different from normal. So give a great example that you can translate it back to the difference between radiators and underfloor heating, which is something everybody loves to think about, right? If you've got very hot radiators in corners of rooms, your body is having to cope with, as you move around the room, it's having to cope with that hot spot and the cold spot, and it's regulating all the time. Underfloor heating is the same temperature across the whole room all the time. Your body is warm, your head is cool because the temperature comes up from the bottom. No re-regulation required. It's like you being in bed with a duvet up to your neck. Yeah? Your head's cold, your body's warm, you're comfortable. It's about whether your body's having to cope all the time with having to retune itself.
Like perimenopause, which Adam will tell me off for talking about.
It could be. It could be.
I wouldn't know.
I'd like not to comment on that.
It's not fun. I'm not going to lie.
I'm sure. And air quality is one of those things, but actually it's very serious if you get the air quality balance wrong in a property. as we'd seen for that poor chap in Rochdale a little while ago, it died because of ongoing mould growth in his property, brought on by the fact that the air quality was poor, condensation levels in that building were high, and it causes long-term health issues.
It's a real issue with that in social housing, isn't there?
Well, not just social
According
housing.
to the news,
Well,
that's where
they might like to take target at social housing, but it's prevalent in private rented as well. It's prevalent in many people's homes if they own it too. They might be owner-occupiers. They just don't know how to drive their house properly. It could be as simple as just making sure you open your window for a period of time, get the moist air out. Put covers on your pans when you're boiling them on the hob. Put the extractor fan on. Dry your washing in a room that's got extract ventilation. It literally is driving your house properly can be something that can minimise these particular issues. And it's education. And people think you need to buy kit. I need to get a dehumidifier. No, they go straight to which magazine. Oh, which is the best dehumidifier? You don't need a bloody dehumidifier. You just need to open your windows and control things properly. Open doors in your internal doors. And you'll find actually when we're doing insulation measures in buildings, you are obviously tightening the building up a little bit. So the air changes the building reduced. Very simply, you can put extractor fans in the buildings, but also you need to be able to have an extractor fan that will do a proper job. Because if there's no air coming into the building somewhere else, that air's not going to leave through the extractor fan. It's like putting your thumb over a straw when you put it in a glass of Coke, and you take it out and your thumb's over the end. The Coke's still in the straw, yeah?
Yeah.
Your extractor fan's doing nothing if the air ain't coming anywhere else. So it'd be things like allowing air infiltration, trickle vents and windows. The industry doesn't like window companies hate the fact that trickle vents are needed windows because they think customers don't want them. If customers knew why they needed them, they would want them.
Yeah.
Yeah, knowledge. It's knowledge. People are not educated on any of this stuff.
Absolutely.
This is the problem.
And the window industry is actually railing against installing trickle vents because people don't want them. Well, they're not telling them why they should have them. Therefore, this educational thing goes round and round in circles.
But this is the consumer education as a whole about what your rights are, as in how to get a good trader, what happens if something goes wrong. It's so limited now, which is why we started Consumer Friend. Yeah. But also to focus, that Adam's idea around focusing on the retrofitting and fabric first stuff, because again, he's really interested in it, as you can tell by his face, because he's so engaged. There isn't any information or any central place for people to go. Like you said, it's really, really, really sort of diluted. And if you put it in a Google search, it's really hard to find the right information in plain English for people to understand it.
Yeah, no, really, really hard. Various people have tried, but it's keeping those things up to date as well, because new research comes out all the time.
This was going to be kind of my next question is science improves, everything improves. So how do you keep up to date with modern technologies? How do you, and at the same time, how can we expect other people, the general public, to keep up to date with those technologies? I guess they don't need to, as long as we've got someone like you in the know who's able to kind of educate us when we need to.
We try to make sure that there's monitoring in the buildings that we, or at least a proportion of the monitoring going into the buildings that we operate with. But quite a lot of it will be about whether the customer is happy with the process and then the end result. But we do need to be able to prove to people that the building is performing as we promised. And systematically, we don't do that. So people are very happy to buy stuff, pay some money, and if it isn't leaking or it doesn't look crap, then they think they've had a good job, right? But if the bills haven't gone down as far as you've promised, or the emissions haven't gone down as far as you promised, or the air quality has been detrimental and you can't detect it, then everything seems fine. We need to have a process by which people are buying almost a guaranteed performance. I think once we get to that point, people will really want that. They spend a certain amount of money and they're guaranteed their bills will go down to a certain level. And if they don't, and they're shown that they don't because there's some metering that shows them they haven't, and by the way, I want my air quality to improve, not get worse. If that's a guaranteed thing, you're going to get customers instantly. Then that puts back to your question, Adam, it puts the emphasis on the supplier being completely up to date with how to measure, use the right kit, be up to date with all the kit that can help them get there, because it's the supplier taking the risk on all this stuff, not the householder. Yeah. Parity, we're working super, super hard on being able to do that, and even getting to the point where we're working with people's disposable income rather than asking them to lash out a load of money up front.
Okay.
But half the customers in the country that buy a car now are doing it through PCP, not through cash or a loan, because it fits with their disposable income. Why shouldn't we be able to offer them a retrofit on the same basis? Well, I think we can, and we're very close to be able to do that. And then you're changing the game. But from a technology perspective, do you know what? All the technology that does a proper job has been around for about 150 years. It's just that we don't have the processes. We don't give ourselves enough time to do these plans and put a design together. We just say, oh my God, my boiler's broke. I need a boiler. Or I need a kitchen. I've just got a bonus at the end of the year. I want a new kitchen. Let's get it in. And you've got salespeople wanting to pressurise you into a sale, get the install quickly so that you don't change your mind. All that kind of stuff is how our industry works. Not slow, considered asset management, I call it. Thinking about this, I think building control officers working for councils should act more like asset managers and help people to create these plans. And rather than being policemen for when things go wrong, they're actually helping them to guide through a process so they are meeting the regs. There isn't a need to introduce trading standards when things go wrong. All that kind of stuff. That's a proper service. Stuff. Being proactive, not reacting. Yeah. So it's kind of, your question was a little bit of a red herring, because I think actually the technology will emerge will help us with the process and the design being done effectively, and professionals introduced at the right time. And therefore we have time to consider the technologies, because we'll actually have time to look for it rather than Googling something. The first thing that comes up, I'll have that.
It's about people and organisations becoming more efficient rather than their technology.
Absolutely.
Good luck.
Yeah, well, that's something I'm working on now. I've just with others, I've been helping to set up something called a national retrofit hub, and we're trying to make sure that all of these particular new processes are designed around the entire industry, bringing the whole industry together for the first time to actually design this stuff properly. I'm really, really confident we'll get there even within a year, because all these things that exist, but nobody talks to each other properly to enable it all to come together.
And almost by not doing it, and everyone else, and the majority of people doing it, if we were to ever get to that situation, you're almost lowering the value of your house, because all the other houses are becoming more valuable, I guess.
So is that what you're saying about my house, Ed?
Yeah, so because you've got solar panels, my house is now worth nothing.
Condenser boiler and my windows sorted, cavity wall insulation on my mortgage, which I did. I borrowed that on my mortgage at a lower percentage rate, on a lower interest rate. Summarise for me, the things that I will take away from this is that, right, we need a plan. Everybody should have a plan around what they need to do in relation to their house to make them energy efficient. We need to be making these changes quickly if we can. Obviously not everybody's going to be in a position to, but if they can, or apply for grants, and we've got guidance on the grants that you can apply for on our website, so make those changes as quickly as possible. If you do, you're going to add value to your house, you're going to save money, and you're going to save the planet. So this has got to be, I can't see anything negative in this ad. No,
it just seems like such a logical thing to do.
Adam's mind is completely blown after today.
It's not that it's blown. It's just that it still can be considered to be quite daunting. So when we come back to this marketplace vulnerability and the fact that we don't access this market, it's trying to get it's almost taking that first step, isn't it? And it's talking to someone, to an expert to take that first step, who can then guide you on your journey. And if people can take that plunge and go, you know what, I'm going to do it, I'm going to give it a go, then that can really, really help them. It's half the battle.
Well, one thing I would say is that person to speak to is quite critical, and there aren't many of them. If anybody's thinking that this is a career they'd like to get into, it would be a wonderful move for people that are doing all sorts of things in other industries right now. It's not a construction thing necessarily. It's somebody that can learn, process, understand buildings, understand energy, but it's about getting people to take the next step. Have a look out for opportunities. It's called retrofit coordination is the name of this particular expertise. And there's actually subsidised training out there all over the UK to do this right now. You could do it in your spare time.
Adam's writing that down.
I am. That's exactly.
Adam's writing it down, especially as he put in on the government careers advice. What career should he do? And it said betting shop manager. So
he did. He does got that look about him, hasn't he?
I went to Plumpton at the weekend for a race day on Easter Sunday.
Nice. Yep.
Had 6 races. Put £10 on each race. I lost £52.50.
Well.
Even on the race I won money on, I only won £7.50 out of my initial £10 stake. So even when I won, I lost. Money.
It could have been worse, couldn't it?
It could have been worse.
That's so Adam. That's so brilliant.
We're gonna bring it to an end. Russell, thank you very much for coming today. I will put links to Parity Project, Retrofit Works, and Retrofit Coordination on the details below. So if you're looking at this podcast, there should be some links there to those websites. Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Louise. As ever, Consumer Friend is available online at www.consumerfriend.org.uk. These podcasts are around, I think this is like our 16th, 17th podcast. So please go back and listen. We've got 2 retrofit podcasts from last season. Follow us on socials, like, subscribe, review if you can. And thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Russell, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
And thank you, Louise.
Always a pleasure, Ad.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
This is Consumer Friend.